I think messing with redistricting is abhorrent. I think it's immoral. I think it's rigging the system. I think it erodes confidence in everything that we're doing. And candidly, I think it undermines democratic institutions on both sides. Because, boy, I got some stuff to say about California Democrats. But right now, I'm going to focus on Texas Republicans. They're firing the first shot. This is Fort Sumter. The Texas Republicans are firing the first shot and saying, we don't believe in the system anymore, so we're just going to go out and rig it, and we're going to steal seats any year that we can, whenever we can, because we can. And keep in mind, Texas is already a pretty gerrymandered state. They've already carved out a whole hell of a lot of Republican seats. That's very different than California at the moment. And the second is, there's really not a whole lot saying Texas can't do this other than shame.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote podcast, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. Me and Mike Madrid actually survived Atlanta, Georgia. Mike, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, buddy. Coming live from Mexico, down here in Guadalajara. It is hot. It is humid. It is summer in the tropics. And yeah, I thought Atlanta was hot, but boy, it's warmer down here. What a great conference that Aleo show ended up being, huh?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about it, what you thought about it. I described it as old home week because we got to see so many of our friends. And you may want to talk about, like, I know you spoke to it on stage about the changing of the guard, which was a really big historic thing.
Well, I've been going to the Aleo conferences for almost 30 years now, about 28 years. And as I shared with the outgoing executive director, Arturo Vargas, who's become a very dear friend, who's been very helpful to me and, opening the door for the young, weird Republican kid. That was a startup phase. The last 30 years were the startup phase of Latino organizations. And 2024 was really, I think, the pivot moment to realize we're not startups anymore. We're very mature. We've got deep, long histories. And there's going to have to be a real inflection point that leaders, and Erika Bernal, who's the new executive director, props to her, shout out to her. We'll have to get her on the podcast, is taking over one of the storied Latino organizations at precisely the moment where everything's going to be changing. Latinos are voting much more Republican. It's almost at a 50-50 split. We've got midterms coming up. We've got these redistricting challenges, which we're going to get into. The whole concept of the Voting Rights Act is going to be threatened and challenged. Minority voting concepts are all going to be completely different over the course of the next 30 years. So just like with a company or an organization, this isn't a startup phase anymore. This is about taking Latino politics to the next level. And I'm excited about it. She's certainly up for it. I know a lot of Latino organizations are getting ready for it. But what's your sense? How did it go for you? Any good conversations or anything that we had a great panel, by the way, great panel.
Yeah, you should talk about that, or hell, I will. We were honored to be joined by Daniel Garza from the Libre Initiative, Michelle Mayorga from the Democratic polling firm that she's a part of, GBAO. I always get them mixed up. They got a lot of letters. I ain't good with letters. And our dear friend and sometimes Latino Vote co-host, Finn Gomez from CBS. So I thought we had a robust conversation. It got heated at times, as it should be. But I think overall it was good to see so many Latino leaders. That room always reminds me that there is more of us than there are of them, and that there was a lot of folks in that room. Before we get to redistricting, which I know you are hot and heavy to talk about, and I am super hot and heavy to talk about, just hot off the presses today, they just released the Texas map. So I'll dig into that here in just a second. But also, I want to take a point of personal privilege, if I could, Mike Madrid. Is that okay?
You take it. You are entitled to that. You deserve that, Chuck. Go get
it. Look, I want to tell you something, that my ass has been a little chapped this last week, and it's been one of those weeks that's been tough for me. And I don't show a lot of vulnerability or try to keep it. I'm always happy, Chuck, on this podcast. But this week has been tougher than most for a couple of reasons. One is folks is starting to hire folks in New Jersey and Virginia. Congressional races and House races are putting their teams together. It should be a good year for Democrats. Such a good year for Democrats. You have Republicans that we'll talk about in a little bit trying to redraw lines in Texas to give them literally more seats in case Democrats pick up a lot of seats in other places. And there's a common theme that's starting to happen that's just got to be talked about. And I pulled myself back and forth this morning to keep my mouth shut. And I just can't, because if I don't say something about it, I don't think anybody else will. And it's what's going on in all of these bigger races right now. And I just want to flag for you Democrats, for you Latinos, and for you Republicans, as we talk about this on the podcast, we talk about how we need to change the narrative. You want to reach Latinos, we can talk all these different issues that Mike Madrid loves to talk about, whether it's working class economy, trade, whether it's the border. But when it comes to the end of the day, they're only going to sit and listen to a few consultants that are around them. And the thing that's really been bothering me is that I'm watching in New Jersey as a white-owned firm is being hired to do their Latino communications and paid media. Same thing is happening in Virginia. Now, both of these firms are great firms. They'll make great ads. I ain't got no beef with those firms. Some of the folks in those firms have been to my house and are my friends. But if we continue to hire the same folks that are non-Latino firms, this isn't about them hiring me. I got enough business. Let me be clear. This is about what we are looking towards and actually making change in our party. And then this week, I had a conversation with an Afro-Latino brother that's going to run in Florida 27, who was like, you should call Chuck Rocha. Somebody told him to. And I thought, that's nice. I'll give him some advice. And he told me how this white consulting firm had recruited him to run for Congress so that they could do his media. And like this stuff, it just continues to happen where there's none of our faces in these campaigns. Again, it ain't about me, and it sounds self-serving because I need the work. It ain't about my firm. I actually thought about it this morning, Mike, and it was kind of the thing that was the final straw, which is in 16 years of having this firm, 16 years, there's only been one really other Latino-owned firm come of age, and that's a group of folks who worked in the Biden White House. They all got together afterwards to start a firm, and they have a great firm. There should be 20 firms like that. But this is the point I want to make. As we look towards trying to make a change of which party is going to be competing for this vote, we're still reliant on the same group of folks who put us in this position. It's like hiring a doctor who keeps killing his patient, hoping that he gets one right. But that's a big chance to take if he's operating on you. So I just say that to say that this ain't a Chuck Rocha bitch fest about brown consultants matter. It's about if we really want to make change. And I think about that young Latino operative, whether it was Mike Madrid back in the day, who really got and went out and found somebody to hire him and worked his way up and got a chance. Like this, it's still not happening. And we've got to do a better job, y'all, if we really want to make that happen, if we want to change the way that we're communicating with our electorate. Our electorate is changing. Mike Madrid talks about it with passion every episode about the movement and how we're up for grabs and the way that we move around. But we continue not to make any changes because it's such a money game. I think the final kick in the balls this week is I've been talking to a brother in Texas who wears a cowboy hat like me. He's Mexican. He's going to make a great congressman, and he's going to run a great campaign. But he hired Joe Biden and Kamala Harris Latino consultants, which are fine, and they'll do a great job. But for fuck's sake, I'm just like over the top about all of this stuff. Then the Texas redistricting happened today. And I'm like, I keep my mouth shut a lot because I got to get business and I got to feed these kids at work for me. But if nothing is going to change, I don't know why we continue to do this and just draw around in circles. And I understand why Mike Madrid got out of this business of having to chase down congressional clients. Because when I have weeks like this, it reminds me of why in the fuck am I still doing it? Because there's folks out there who are hungry for change, and there's an electorate so yearning for somebody to stand up for them, they would vote for Donald fucking Trump because they said at least he'd break something. So as we talk about redistricting and the power structure in California and the power structure in Texas, when we get done with that conversation, think about, is it really going to change no matter what the lines are if the same group of Republican or Democratic operatives are still running the same campaign playbook? Mike, sorry for that long tangent, but I'm pissed off this morning.
Brother, preach. And I appreciate the vulnerability and the honesty, the painful, stark honesty is so necessary. It's so important to hear. It's why I think on this podcast, we do our level best to promote those voices in whatever professions are out there, is because there were so few opportunities for the old guys like you and I. And it is painful and frustrating to see it continuing. Look, I bitch a lot about the Republican Party because the Republican Party doesn't get it. And as I've argued for a long time, the Republican Party is winning Latino votes despite itself, not because of it. But guys, the Democratic Party, if I might jump in here a little bit too, there's a generational problem in the Democratic Party, which is just obvious, man. It's like, the problem isn't just Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, although that's part of it. All these 80-year-olds that won't leave. And part of that comes with the thinking and relationships of carrying the same old stuff you've always done. And let's be clear, I had to come to terms with this as a very young man, as a young consultant in the business. Politics ain't about the best and the brightest. It's about the people you know, the relationships you have, and the people that are loyal to you and they trust you because it's a shark tank out there. But for fuck's sake, man, at some point, when the evidence is so obvious that you don't understand what's going on, people got to push people out and say, it's time for a new generation of thinkers. It's time for us to look at the problems that we have and say, if we're the party that's premised on being working class, if we're the party that's premised on being non-white and building coalitions that way, why are we losing non-white people and working class people, but hiring white college-educated consultants over and over and over again? Like, why is that so difficult to understand? It's not like these guys aren't going to go make millions of dollars somewhere else. They're not going to be destitute and miss their mortgage payments. It means they probably won't be able to buy another boat or another house in the Cayman Islands or something. For God's sakes, doesn't the country matter to you enough to put in competent consulting and leadership? And this is a message to both parties. So those of you that are listening to this podcast, those of you that have become fans, one of the only reasons that Chuck and I, and maybe I've been doing it for a long time because I just can't control myself, but when I hear Chuck talking like this, that comes from years of every cycle, the same thing going on. And after 30 years, you start to realize maybe things aren't changing because the system doesn't want to change. It doesn't care about actually getting change. It just exists to perpetuate itself. We'll talk a little bit more about that on redistricting, but Chuck, I feel you. Keep pushing, brother. You're obviously making a big name for yourself, but it's not the pace that you and I would love to have or love to see.
Yeah, we're going to move on into redistricting. I want to finish by saying this piece about distinguishing change. I have seen change. I'm always trying to look for the glass to be half full. If you grew up like me, grew up with nothing, you got to always kind of be hopeful, like most of our gente is. And there's a lot of changes at the party committees and super PACs, but where power in politics, this is important to write this down. The power in politics is with the candidate. The candidate, like a Ruben Gallego or a Bernie Sanders, they have the power and they pay normally full commission. So it's easier for a Latino consultant like me to get a job with the House Majority PAC or D-Trip, and I'm super happy to have that. And they're doing some of the best work with Senate Majority. And there's Latino and Black consultants, and they're culturally competent. Because you know what? To Mike Madrid's point, they see the numbers, and they know they needed to change things, and they started back a few cycles ago. But the candidate world, this is my real complaint, and I'll stop, I promise, is that there's very few of us around the power of the candidate. So when that young state rep or that young singer becomes a congressman, there was never an entry point for that young Latino or Black or whoever consultant working class, actually don't matter what color they are, to be close to that power to learn and to take it and to grow and do the things. So over many, many years, mine and Mike's 30 years, you see very few new firms or power structures. And what the big white Democratic firms have done is hire a token Latina to be a partner or a senior staffer that goes out and sells this to the Latino candidates. Mike's shaking his head because he knows I'm exactly right.
100%.
And that's where they said, oh my God, we've got this great Latina. She's not making the ad. She's not writing the ad. She's on every Zoom call. And she is actually a good person. I got no bitch with that. But that's not how you build power. So that's why I leave it. Let's separate the candidate work from the D-Trip and the other party committees that are doing great work. That leads us to Texas. In Texas, there was a map that was dropped today, because I could do a whole TED Talk on this other shit. On Texas, there was a map dropped today. You should go check it out. The latest one is from Punchbowl News, had the scoop on this morning. I sent it to Mike before he even got up. And just to whittle it down, Mike, the first thing that made me think of you is that the Republicans are already beating their chest saying there will be now more majority Latino seats under their maps than there was under the Democratic maps. This leads right into what Mike Madrid said they would do, and they would go too far, and it could come back to bite them in the ass. But the way that they changed these maps are this way. They took Cuellar and Gonzalez, I think that's 34 and 28, to make them a little bit more Republican. They were like R plus 2 or 3, 8. Trump got 7 or 8. They're like R plus 10 now. If things stay the way they are and the Latino vote stays the way they are. I don't know if they shored up 15 yet. That's between them, or if they took any Republicans from 15 over to the others, because if they did, it helps a great candidate down there in the 15th that'll announce soon. And that would be good news, and they could lose the 15th if they move, but I don't think they move those R's from there. So that's the valley. Those were the easy ones. You got to move a few precincts, and Cuellar and Gonzalez are gone. And ironically, Mike Madrid, Cuellar is now in the same district with Tony Gonzalez. So they moved those and put those together. So that's the Valley. In Dallas, Julie Johnson, who was, remember we talked about the suburbs? She was the suburban North Dallas district. She's going to be gone. It's a red district now. Mark Vesey, who had that dumbbell district between Fort Worth and Dallas, they took Fort Worth away from him, make it just a Dallas Democratic seat. But again, we'll lose 1 seat in Dallas and 2 seats in the Valley. That's 3 so far. In Houston, we'll lose a seat. They're looking at that 18th that's vacant right now and just kind of renaming it something else, and there'll be a Houston seat gone. And the real kick in the ass is, and I think they did this on purpose, is Lloyd Doggett, the senior statesman, 70-something years old, to your point, Mike, 78 maybe, in Austin, who has all of downtown Austin, which is just a city district. And right next to him, Greg Casar, the chairman of the Progressive Caucus, his district butts up to his in Austin, but there's not enough Democrats in Austin, so they run down 35 and got Democrats out of San Antonio to make that. They've done away with all of that, and it's just one Austin Democratic. So one of them has to leave or they have to run against each other. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are the 5 seats that they could pick up. Mike Madrid, I kick it over to you for Texas before we go to California.
Well, let me say, and again, this is going to be a great year in covering this topic. In fact, Chuck, we should probably do a couple of Substack lives because we're the only 2 people that I think can talk about Latino politics in both states, district by district, this way in the country. And so we need to highlight that fact because, as I was saying, and I wrote a big, long piece about this, 4 out of the 5 new Republican districts are Latino-majority districts. And I think they're making a mistake. I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't a rightward trend. I freaking wrote a book about it. Of course I believe it. Of course it's happening. But this doesn't mean it's your base vote, especially heading into this year. Like, this is going to be a bad year for Republicans and Latinos in the long-term trend. So Republican, let me make this really clear. I think messing with redistricting is abhorrent. I think it's immoral. I think it's rigging the system. I think it erodes confidence in everything that we're doing. And candidly, I think it undermines democratic institutions on both sides. Because, boy, I got some stuff to say about California Democrats. But right now, I'm going to focus on Texas Republicans. They're firing the first shot. This is Fort Sumter. The Texas Republicans are firing the first shot in saying, we don't believe in the system anymore, so we're just going to go out and rig it, and we're going to steal seats any year that we can, whenever we can, because we can. And keep in mind, Texas is already a pretty gerrymandered state. They've already carved out a whole hell of a lot of Republican seats. That's very different than California at the moment. Okay? And the second is, there's really not a whole lot saying Texas can't do this other than shame. Like, and in a rank abuse of power, which apparently that's where we're at now. Again, very different from California that's got a constitutional requirement. But this opening salvo basically says the system is here to be gamed, not in the dark of night, but out in the open. And we're going to go out and grab as many more Republican seats as we can because we know this is going to be a bad Republican year. Nobody rigs the system unless you're losing control of the system. If you're popular, if people like you, you don't go out there and rig the system. The big assumption that is being made that I think is wrong is that Republicans now, because they've had a good, 3-cycle run, is they believe that Latinos are now kind of a permanent part of their coalition. There's no question that Latinos are going to have to be permanent part of the coalition. But I would remind Republicans the same way as I remind Democrats. What happened in the year before that 3-year trend Mike Madrid was telling everybody about? That year was 2018. You've been hearing me say 4 out of the last 5 elections, Democrats, you've been losing Latinos to Republicans. That's true. I don't care what Democratic pollsters and map makers are saying. They're lying. That's what happened. 4 out of the 5 Democrats have been losing it. But what about that 5th one that Mike Madrid has not talked about? That 5th one was 2018, Trump's first midterms, when ICE was raiding Southwestern Mexican Latino families and workplaces and churches and schoolyards, when Fox News was running anti-immigrant content 24/7 on migrant caravans coming from South and Central and Mexico up to invade our country. And when Trump was building the wall, remember all that? What happened? Latinos responded with the highest Latino turnout in midterm history, with the largest anti-Republican break in history. That's what 2026 is signing up to be. Do I think it's going to be as bad for Republicans as 2018 was? Probably not, but it ain't going to be good. And it ain't going to be kind of good. A lot of big retrenchment of Latinos are going to go back to the Democratic Party. Building Latino majority districts and assuming they're going to be Republican districts is one hell of a gamble to be taking on gerrymandering this way. I think they're making a big mistake. And it's not just a mistake in Texas. I think they're opening a salvo nationally that they're going to come to regret.
The only thing I'll add on Texas, and then we'll go over, because I know you're hot and bothered about things happening in California, is this is something you should, all of you nerds, and I'm just talking about Mike Madrid, who's a super nerd, knows about, is that they're working off, Mike, the old census numbers from 5 years ago in a year where it was undercounted because of COVID already. So if they go in and build the districts that Mike Madrid is talking about, they're using old numbers, and there could be millions of voters that are voters who nobody would know even exist because of it. I mean, there's just so much going on there with the old counts, drawing the lines, assuming that these Latinos are going to vote for Trump. If you look at the voter performance index, again, super nerds, all of you fucking brainiacs with the tape on your glasses, I know you love this shit. This is over many cycles of what the Democratic performance is in this PVI in the Cook Political Report. That's not just taking in Trump, but it looks at all the Republican performance and Democratic performance overlaid with county commissioners and other things to get a real idea of how Republican under the old numbers it is. The Trump number for the last election is way bigger. So these are, let's take the Cuellar district and the Gonzales district. Right now, they're both Trump plus 10 districts, but the PVI of these districts are just R plus 3. Because if for years they were Democrats down there, and these folks down there, Mike Madrid shaking his head because he knows it's right, they still elect a Democratic county commissioner and their mayors or whoever, because they've been, that's all that was. Republicans are late to the game there, but now they're catching up quickly. But how does this all move when Mike Madrid talks about 18 and then 20, these two big fluctuations? There was a map up yesterday, y'all, that talked about if this map was to go into effect, and I'll stop after this point, and you looked at the Beto O'Rourke performance in these districts, they would only flip 2 of them, because Beto O'Rourke did fairly well in the Valley because he ran his name as Beto. And he would have won the 2 Texas Valley seats under the way he performed as a Democrat, not how Trump performed as a Republican. This is I'm drawing you a picture of what Mike Madrid's saying. Does that do that right, Mike?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Let me add a little bit of sauce onto that steak. I don't even know if that's a term, but I'm going to try to act roasty here. Because who puts sauce on their steak? There's no map maker. There's no Republican map maker at the last census in Texas that predicted the size or even the fact that a shift was going to happen in the Rio Grande Valley. Just like there's no Democratic map maker in California that predicted the shift in the Coachella Valley or the Central Valley or in every Hispanic dominant county in California. Not a single one. Why do I bring that up? Because map makers work on data from the past. They don't look at demography for the future. So when Mike Madrid was writing a book saying, this is going to happen, everyone's saying, no, it's not. That's just this Republican guy, guessing at stuff. No, it's not. All of these people look at past performance and assume that that's the way this is going to look. Both parties are making the same exact mistake right now. To Chuck's point, you can't have these numbers assuming that Trump is going to continue to be as popular as he's going to be 10 years out, 3 years out. Hell, you can't do it for next November. And to be gambling your entire majority on these faulty or at best uninformed, untested assumptions, that's best case, is just madness. And maybe it's desperation, but it's one hell of a bad gamble And my strong position is Democrats should not be taking the bait here. They should not be, but they're going to, and we'll get to that in just a second with Texas, with California, when everyone's going to be like, oh, well, we're going to fight fire with fire. I've got a lot of thoughts about that one. Okay. Democrats, you all talk about fire with fire. Where the hell were you in 2024? Okay. Where were you? I've got a lot to say about fighting fire with fire. But the one thing I will say is this: you do not put the entire country in jeopardy by responding to this kind of nonsense in a year where you're going to overperform considerably. Let me just draw a hypothetical scenario, which, by the way, I think is as likely as Democrats drawing as many seats as Republicans in red and blue states. That hypothetical is this: Democrats will do well in a lot of these Latino-majority districts that Republicans are creating, thinking that they're going to win. How about them apples if Democrats actually win in seats that Republicans draw of Latinos that they think they're going to win? I think the odds are greater for Democrats than they are for Republicans winning under the seats that the Republicans drew to their advantage. Don't allow yourself to degrade our institutions because you lose the moral high ground of saying, we're protecting democracy. We're defending institutions. If you jump in there and game the system, you're not. You're just as complicit as the Republicans. The way you ultimately win in this environment, even when the odds are somewhat stacked against you, and I'm saying somewhat because Texas is already gerrymandered. It's already gerrymandered. The way you win is you win elections. That's how you win. Are the odds stacked against you? Yeah. But are the political winds blowing strongly, strongly, strongly in your directions? Yeah. So fucking lean into that. Win even on their battleground. That happens all the time with good campaigns and a good message. My fear is the Democrats are basically acknowledging they don't have a message. They don't know what they stand for. They don't know what they're going to argue. It's simply anti-Trump or resorting to redrawing, meaning rigging the system to have just as strong a Democratic districts as possible. Unnecessary, ill-advised. I think they're making a big political mistake. They should not be returning the favor of what the Republicans are doing.
Let me take that Worcestershire from you because that's what kind of steak sauce I like is the Worcestershire. And I will say you should spell that real quick. The Worcestershire sauce, and give you one little anecdote on Texas, and I want you to start talking about California before you pop a vein in your forehead. And that is, to Mike's point, think about these districts I just mentioned. Ain't none of them except for Cuellar and maybe a little bit for Vicente. I'll give you both of them because they do a general. Most of these, Mike, have never seen a general election campaign run in these safe Democratic seats. The one who lost by the least outside of the two in the Valley lost by less, was a 16-point advantage. So they don't run, and I know beef to my Democratic Congress people. They do a great job, but they don't have to run, so why spend the money? Right? So they don't spend that much money in the general election. They're not digging deep in algorithms and looking at who they can get, who are the new registered. They don't run that campaign. To Mike Madrid's point, that leaves you a whole group of Latinos that the Republican Party thinks are going to act like Latinos in the Valley, who've never really heard from anybody. They know the Republican Party is probably a little stronger in their county. They damn sure know Donald Trump, the most popular figure in American politics. But Democrats don't walk past the graveyard, whistle past the graveyard thinking that those folks is really dead, because they ain't. They just never heard from us. There's never been a general election really run there. They may know Beto O'Rourke or Colin Allred may have sent them a piece of mail or something, but nothing that was really a multi-layered strategic campaign to go turn folks out. When I get excited about a candidate who wears a cowboy hat in McAllen, Texas, it's because I know he's connected to the voters there. I know people know him. I get mad because of who he may be working with and not me, just because I love him so much and I think he can win, right? And I want to help him do that. But there's not that many. We need more folks like that running, and folks like that actually are out doing it. And if you haven't heard from nobody, don't think we're going to be Republicans if you ain't never even tried to make us Democrats. Now, Mike, tell me, is there anything happening, and are we going to redraw us 5 Democratic seats in California now?
So the short answer, I think, is there's the Democrats are going to do everything they can to try. Gavin Newsom has made it very public, including bringing a handful of Texas legislators, Democrats, to California to hold a press conference to learn more about what Texas is doing in order to prepare to fight back. Now, let me explain California. I know there's a lot of California listeners, but there's a lot of non-California listeners. Very different than in Texas or most other states. In most states, like Texas, the legislature and the governor can basically handle redistricting however they want to, subject to court challenges. Not in California. In 2010, after doing redistricting through the legislature with the governor for many, many years, we put it before the voters to have what we call the Citizen Redistricting Commission, which is we've got a literally 30,000 people applied to be on this commission. They whittled it down through a process to about a dozen people, equally balanced with Republicans, Democrats, and independents. They heard thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of testimony, reviewed thousands and thousands of hours of maps from different map makers. Any citizen could use the tools and technology to draw their own maps and come and argue for it. And after that process, we came up with the congressional districts that we have in California today, which for the most part are pretty objective. If they lean one direction, they lean pretty good Democrat. The Democrats still had an advantage here. Most people would argue the Republicans came out really upset through the process saying, hey, wait, this is a bias towards the Democrats. And that leads us to the current situation because Gavin Newsom and the Democrats, even though we've got a supermajority in our legislature, don't have the ability to just redraw maps on a whim. They're going to have to go before the voters and have the voters approve both the fact that they're doing this mid-decade and the maps themselves. And that's what's so unique, is the Democrats, the only way they can legally get around this is part of the constitutional amendment is inserting the actual maps into the ballot measure and saying, this is the map. And the voters are going to have to vote up and down on whether that are the maps that they want to pass and go into in effect. Incidentally, this is going to require a special election, which will cost $200 million and can't be executed till probably about a September timeframe. Can't be doing this in June, July. There's not enough time to get all of this stuff squared away. So you're going to have a June primary, a September special election, and then a November election for the midterms in California. If this works out the way the Democrats want it to, or some of the Democrats want it to.
Wait, when would it be on a ballot? Would it be on the September ballot, or is there a special election for the ballot?
So there will be the regular primary in June, when we choose who our gubernatorial candidate's going to be. Then there's going to have to be a special election called to put the maps, literally the maps, on the ballot and say yes or no, Californians, in September, in between the primary and the general, 60 days before the November election, maybe less, 45 days. Now, if the voters vote them down, we wasted $200 million, a hell of a lot of heartache and a lot of time, and the old maps stay. If they pass, then there will be candidates running in 45 days for congressional districts that didn't exist before. Follow? Yeah.
I don't want to, but I think I am.
This is what we're doing. And so then there will be the November midterm elections with the new congressional lines drawn under these new maps with new candidates and new districts and new areas. I don't know how you get around, by the way, the fact that you've already had a primary under old map lines.
That's the part I was getting confused by, because you're saying in June we're going to have maybe a primary under the old lines. They changed the lines in September. Folks have to run in totally different districts in those lines.
It's a mess.
Bottom
line is this is a triple bank shot here, and I'm not saying it can't be done, but I'm saying if you want to create a scenario where you're holding all the cards in the political winds politically, when people don't like Donald Trump, when they're motivated against ICE, when they hate these tariffs, when the economy's sliding into recession, he's probably going to appear in the Jeffrey Epstein files in just a couple of weeks, when nothing could be going good for the Republicans except for what the Democrats are about to deal for them, which is let's rig the system. Let's rig the system on, and get this, by the way, under the current maps, it's projected the Democrats are going to pick up 3 seats anyway. So this is all a rigging of the system for maybe 1 more seat. You're going to risk all of this nonsense for maybe 1 additional seat.
you lost me a little bit when you said under the current maps, in the environment that we're in, projections are now there's a good shot. I'll use my words and not yours to pick up an additional 3 seats for the Democrats under the current lines. And in my head, it would be like a Valadeo. It would be one of those Orange County seats.
Calvert.
That's the one I wasn't thinking of. I was thinking of Orange County and Valadeo, but Calvert.
Cal, Inland Empire, Valadeo in the Central Valley, and Young Kim in the in Orange County. Those are the 3. You're going to get those. Those are the seats that the Democrats picked up in the 2018 blue wave. Literally the exact same seats.
That's right, because Gil Cisneros was in that Orange County seat, right?
Yeah, but they've already got
Josh Harder in California 22.
Precisely. And so
so both of these seats, for those of you at home, they're right now like maybe an R plus 2 or 3. But Trump, again, if you look at the PVI of these districts, they're R plus 1, 2, or 3. But Trump won a lot of these seats by 8, 9, 10. But Trump ain't on the ballot, to Mike Madrid's point.
Not only is Trump not on the ballot, but they got all of that increase, that Trump plus 8, came from young Latinos that are pissed off at Trump right now. And so they're either going to shift back, and I'm not saying all of it, but enough of it, or they're not going to vote, which ironically, I never thought I'd be saying young Latinos not voting helps the Democrats, but that's the world we live in now. And so my point is the Democrats, all these map makers that are in California, Democrats in California, are making the same damn mistake based off of bad assumptions that Texas Republicans are. Because in their infinite wisdom, all these people, none of who are Latinos sitting around the table, are cutting up the maps and saying, these are Republicans, these are Democrats. They're both making these bad assumptions that aren't tested. And by the way, you're undermining what the voters approved. We have called this the gold standard of redistricting because it has the most citizen input. It's the most transparent. It's the least partisan process to redistrict anywhere in the country. And now when pressed, the Democrats are like, no. We don't want that stuff. We don't want that good government stuff. We want to stack the deck because the Republicans are stacking the deck. That may work if you're a really hardcore partisan. But if you're not, like most voters aren't, you're running a real risky play of pissing a lot of people off where Democrats have already pissed people off by rigging the damn system. Like you're literally playing into what drove a lot of Latinos to Bernie Sanders in the first place, is rigging the system and running against the Democratic establishment. You're showing yet again, you are more than willing to rig and manipulate the democratic process to save democracy. Go pound it, man. Like that message don't work anymore. So this moral high ground of we're the defenders of democracy and we're going to protect blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, let's do that by getting rid of citizen input. Let's do that by getting rid of the most transparent process. Let's get rid of that by making this the most nonpartisan process in the country. And one more, while I'm really on this, the group that had the most influence in the citizen redistricting process, the loudest voice, were Latinos. So you're going to be dismissing all of the input from our friends at Naleo, our friends at MALDEF, our friends at Hope, all of the Latino organizations that were saying this is what we ought to be doing. This is the way a community of interest looks. All of that is set aside because at this moment of existential threat, let's just suspend the Constitution. Not a good idea, guys. Not good political messaging. Even if you win, it's bad.
It'll be interesting to see if the voters give a shit about what Mike Madrid's talking about, because both parties are going to try it, because most people don't know who their congressmen are. Most people don't give a shit if they see it as a power grab. They think both parties do it. And we're going to prove that, in fact, true if we do what we do with California, even though Republicans started it. And it's like little boys in the playground. He started it. Well, I'm going to whoop his ass and I'm going to do it now. So, but do people care about it? Here's something that jumped out to me this morning is that Democrats, House Majority Forward, the League of Conservation Voters, a bunch of other good Democratic groups have started running ads today in these Texas congressional districts, telling voters what Mike Madrid is talking about, is that people are circumventing a system for their own benefit to rig a playing field. Does this sound like anybody? Donald Trump, anybody? Bueller? Bueller, because this is how he got elected, was grievance politics about a system that's rigged. Mike Madrid is so worked up. Again, I'm not going to speak for Mike. I'll speak from what I see in Mike, who's one of my best friends, about there was a long process to make these holier-than-thou Democrats have this redistricting process that was open and whatever, and it was all these things. And now you're like, well, because of this, we're not going to do it no more. Something that really stuck in my craw this week that was so, how can I say this and not lose client? It was so Democrat of Democrats, is when we went back, the Politico went and did an analysis of all the Democratic states who have redistricting, who have the governor, the state legislature, and they can control it 100%. Well, guess what? Because we're Democrats and we are holier than thou, we have some type of a redistricting commission in all of these places to make it quote unquote fair, because we're better than the Republicans who will just go in and use their power for their bit and do their thing and make sure that their people get what they want because they're in power and do the winner goes the spoils, right? But Democrats are like, we're going to be fair with everyone. We're going to give everybody a chance to weigh in here. We're not going to gerrymander because we're so much better than those Republicans. And I can just see it all. And now we can't, literally, unless we do what Mike Madrid just said, change the shit because we have been holier than thou about this. And again, Democrats, you can be holier than thou all you want, and that's great. And we should be. And we shouldn't, if you get down in the mud, you're going to get dirty and you're going to smell a little dirty. But also, if you don't win an election, you ain't got no power to do shit. So you should win some elections. We all should win some elections. When I did my big tirade at the beginning of this podcast, it wasn't about me worrying about somebody getting hired. It's about me wanting to win elections. And over many cycles of getting it just a little bit wrong, we start seeing a sliding when you ain't showing up with the right cultural competency of what a working class Latino dude's going through and talking to him about what the fuck you're talking to him about. It ain't about me getting hired. I want to win elections to have more power to change my community. Mike Madrid does. We're going to argue about the cost of living or whatever the issue sets he wants to or whatever. We'll disagree on that. That's a healthy debate to have, and I'm learning that. But for those of you at home, this debate's going to go on. And the point I want to make is people don't give a shit about what Mike Madrid just said. They don't give a shit about what I just said. But if you run enough ads in California saying what Mike Madrid just said to voters, it's going to piss them off. If you run enough ads in Texas saying what Mike Madrid just said, you're going to piss them off. I'm really going to be interested to sit back and watch this and see if that actually happens. Am I missing anything there, Mike?
Oh, brother, you nailed it right on bullseye. And here's what the irony is Republicans will be running ads in California arguing against everything they're doing in Texas, and Democrats will be running ads in Texas arguing against everything they're doing in California. And both sides are full of crap. And that's where this gets to this is where my bugaboo comes in, Chuck. You can go ahead and use that word too. It's not a Georgetown
bugaboo
word.
I'm writing that shit down, bugaboo.
Yeah, you like the bugaboo word, okay? Is I've been listening to Democrats talking about this holier than thou righteous stuff, and I helped co-found the Lincoln Project to fight for democracy and the right stuff and standing up for the right thing. I get all these kudos and thank you for standing up, Mike Madrid, for principle over party. And now 95% of these Democrats are all going to throw the principles and the country and the Constitution under the bus to get partisan advantage. They're doing the exact same damn thing as the Republicans are doing. So if you're out there, Democrats, this is for you listening and tuning in, going, we need to unilaterally arm up and we need to fight fire with fire. Well, you know what? You might as well be Susan Collins from Maine. You might as well be Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, because that's the exact same attitude that says it's about party over politics. And if you're using the excuse that they did it first, as Chuck said, that schoolyard excuse, then there's literally no reason to have this fight. You know why? Because once you go down that road, you already lost by engaging in the fight. If you think that undermining transparency and civic engagement and voter support are good things so that your party can do better in response, you already lost, brothers and sisters. You just lost the fight by buying into a dirty, nasty, toxic, broken system. That's my argument to you. We can do better. And I'm going to look back to one great American who actually stood up and said, we can do better than this. His name was Abraham Lincoln when he gave the right makes might speech, which is when you do the right thing, There is no more powerful a political tool than being able to stand on the ground of what is right. And that, boys and girls, is, as to Chuck Rocha's point, is why you should be trying to win elections. Maybe if you didn't lose Latino voters by 16, 20 points over the last two presidential election cycles, you wouldn't be in this fix. Maybe that was the time to fight. Maybe that was when you fight fire with fire, by bringing on the right consultants to help you win these voters and help keep them back in the fold.
Now he's trying to soften me up now.
Well, I'm trying to.
Now he's trying to soften me up.
You're right, brother. You're right. It's like that's fighting fire with fire. Okay, you don't get your ass kicked and then wake up and go, well, let's game the system too, because the problem is you lost your base voters. That's your problem. That's what got you here. Okay, and now the other side is basically saying they're ours and we're taking them. And if you'd never lost them in the first place, if you'd been listening for the past decade or longer, you wouldn't be in this fix. So you get no empathy for Mike Madrid, who's believed still
no shit.
After 30 years of being in this business, that the Democrats were somehow fighting on the fight for righteousness and what's good and principle over party, and go pound it. Stop buying it.
I like it. I like seeing Mike Madrid all get wound up, and I like a good fight too myself. Like, there's a lot of scars on my face. I talked about it on the podcast this week when I was talking about boxing and political campaigns. We're going to be bumping up next to a hard out for me because I got to get my hair did here in a little bit. But the second thing and the last thing I'll bring up, Mike, as we close the show, is that in your favorite state of North Carolina, we have a Democratic nominee who's the former governor named Roy Cooper in an open seat that looks like the RNC chairman, who's the former state Republican chairman. We're going to have a real fight there. It'll be interesting. I just want to bring up the fact to you that this morning it was reported that Roy Cooper raised $3.4 million in 24 hours. So we're going to talk a lot about the Senate map as we come together, because you got the one pickup opportunity in North Carolina. For those of you watching the YouTube, and you should be subscribed, I'm using my hand puppets again. North Carolina pickup. Susan Collins, who Mike just put her name in his dirty mouth a while ago. She's in Maine. Can you beat her? We spent $1 bazillion and not beat her, but it's 2018 all over again, maybe. And then there's Michigan. People's like, well, it's Michigan, Chuck, and it's an off year. Yeah, but it's Michigan and it's an off year. So there needs to be a lot of money spent there as well. And then there's no other place to pick up a seat except in Texas, where you may have a Democratic primary between Colin Allred and James Tallarico, and it's going to be an interesting year. I just want to make sure that Mike knew that there's going to really be a race in North Carolina, so we have a reason to go see Irene.
I was going to say,
we need to
go on site. We need to go to Carolina and do a little Latino Vote podcast from North Carolina, because
and we can go to the coast.
We'll go wherever you want, man. Try to catch a little baseball game, some minor league baseball down there. That, get some barbecue and learn.
They got some fishing, Mike. I'm gonna put you in one of them boats with me, and I'm gonna take you out there fishing. I'm gonna get some music going. Andres is gonna make another great YouTube short like he did for the last show. Y'all should be checking out our YouTube channel.
We'll take a vote on YouTube in the comments section, because I don't think people want to see Mike Madrid in a boat fishing. But if they do, I'll do it.
I think they would pay big money to see your California ass up in my fishing boat. I'm going to put a worm on his hook, not his worm, but a worm on a hook. And we're going to get out there. We're going to do some fishing. It'll be good. Look, thanks all of y'all for tuning in this week. Me and Mike are full of piss and vinegar. You can tell it's election time again. Don't forget to follow us, like us, the YouTube page. You get to see a lot of great shorts. Andres and our production team are kicking ass over there and doing a really great job. I'm headed to New York tonight to do some CNN. Next week, Mike Madrid may be driving this thing by himself. Mike, I just thought I'm going to be in New Orleans next week, speaking at the Netroots Nation. So don't embarrass me if you got to drive this thing by yourself. Netroots Nation.
You got to take some videos.
New Orleans.
We can put it on the YouTube channel for the viewers.
There may be a little fishing going to happen in New Orleans with my boy Alexis Acevedo. So stay tuned. Y'all be good. Until next time, me and Mike Madrid, we gone.